Hello, everyone. I am Karen from RenalTracker, and many institutions, such as the National Kidney Foundation, now recommend a plant-based diet because of a growing number of clinical studies that support its ability to delay the progression of kidney disease. So to talk about this, I invited the two people on our team actively helping people living with chronic kidney disease. They help patients or the loved ones of patients like yourself learn how to make delicious, kidney-friendlier choices. Coach Ginny is RenalTracker's dietitian and has had many people reach out to her asking for personalized nutrition advice. The CKD chef Duane will share from his own experience of delaying dialysis for 20 years by changing his lifestyle and shifting to a plant-based diet. So let's start with the basics. What is a kidney-friendly plant-based diet? Duane?
Well, as a CKD patient, I used a plant-based diet to replace as much animal protein and animal fat out of my diet as possible.
All right. And Ginny, from the nutrition perspective, how do you basically define what a kidney-friendly plant-based diet is?
Well, let's start off by defining what plant-based diet is. Plant-based diet is simply advocating or urging people to make the diet focus more on vegetables and fruits, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, whole grains, or sprouted grains. And they're making plant food items as their main source of food in the diet. So, but it does not restrict consumption of animal-based protein. However, that is not given a priority. So there are two different kinds of plant-based diet. One we call regular and one whole food plant-based diet. The difference is that the regular one is simply, they're including some processed foods, but the whole food diet does not include them. So basically strictly limiting to fresh or fresh frozen food products. So if we say kidney-friendly plant-based diet, that means we're looking at food items that we consider also sodium, proteins, phosphorus, and potassium.
Got it. And Duane, from what I understand, you are following the plant-based and whole foods version of it, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Because that tends to be the healthier approach, I guess, Ginny, with less processed things in general.
So as we know, when we say processed, they have canned goods and all these things, and those are high in sodium. So yes.
And a healthier plant-based plate would look something like this in the slide, Ginny, where you're basically replacing a fourth of the proteins with plants instead of animal protein, I guess.
Yes. So if we are basing on the MyPlate version, right? If anyone is familiar with the usual MyPlate version, this is the plant-based, meaning most of the things that you put on your plate are all plant-based food items, such as half of it should come from green leafy vegetables, a quarter of it instead of animal proteins, then you just switch to plant-based proteins, and the other quarter of it would be whole grains and some other non-leafy vegetables.
Got it. Okay, this is a helpful illustration of what that could look like. And so, Duane, why does a kidney-friendly plant-based diet work for you?
Well, when I was really sick, my doctor explained to me that my kidneys were already stressed out and they obviously weren't filtering very well. So plant-based proteins are much milder and gentler on your kidneys.
Got it. So how does it make sense from a medical perspective, Ginny, that plant-based proteins are more gentle on your kidneys than animal-based?
Well, let's look at how it started. Studies previously on plant-based have been progressive over the years. You know, when it started, because it has positive effects on cholesterol, regulation of blood sugar, control of heart disease, to name a few. Well, in fact, in the case of CKD, plant-based has low animal saturated fat. Okay, it has lower sulfur-containing amino acids. meaning less acid loads, and lower phosphorus, which are both associated with cardiovascular disease and chronic kidney disease, respectively. So in that sense, what Chef Duane was saying, it is gentler on the kidneys, basically because of those things that we consider. And we know for a fact that chronic kidney disease sometimes stems from diabetes, from hypertension, and all these things that a plant-based diet could provide benefits from, based on what a person can have with the plants. Higher fiber, lower sodium content in plants, and all these things.
Got it. So just by simply switching, you're adding a lot more fiber and having options that have lower sodium content in the first place, which is why it's good for CKD. Interesting. And that makes a lot of sense. But there's a different thing it's a different thing when you're reading about it and actually doing it. So Chef Duane, what is your experience when you transitioned to a plant-based diet? Were you from the get-go 100% really good at it since you're a chef?
Well, I wished I said my lips never touched meat again, but that's not true at all. I actually went into this challenge like an arrogant chef. I've been around food all my life. I thought this was going to be a piece of cake and it was going to be so easy. And what I found was I had to change a 40-year eating habit. And that's not an easy thing to do. I had to learn how to actually cook even better because I was using plants rather than animal as adding flavor. I also realized by changing my diet, I have a real texture issue with food. So for me, I like chewy foods, and I had to work with, let me use an example as tofu. I can make tofu taste good, but I couldn't get it to the texture I liked. So I had to learn how to make tofu kind of chewy so it had some texture to it. I also did some research on plant-based proteins, and I had to look at and do some research on what do vegans eat, since they eat only plant-based. What was the protein sources? And then I had to look at their recipes and then dissect the recipes to try to make them kidney friendly. It's not all vegan recipes are kidney friendly.
Got it. Yes, because you would have to consider potassium and phosphorus in plants in particular. Right. And that could be challenging. But what's interesting to me is you're pretty much, it's like learning about and discovering a whole new cuisine, right? Like you would have Chinese or Italian food, and what you've done is explore plant-based, kidney-friendly food as a cuisine. So that's, I think, a very wonderful way of looking at it. Instead of, oh, I'm just restricted to these things, it's actually, hey, there's a whole new world that requires you to be a better chef, that exposes you to different flavors and textures in food. And I think that's very exciting to hear for people who have CKD or are cooking for people with CKD. Great. So everything sounds deliciously healthy. Thanks, Coach Ginny and Chef Duane. And that's it for our introduction to a kidney-friendly plant-based diet.